All right,
Hey!
nobody can see our cameras when we're dancing whenever the screen is going up, I think. Yeah, okay, everybody, it's Friday. It is Thanksgiving next week, so there's not going to be any hotline next week. We're going to be hanging out for the holiday or Black Friday shopping or whatever, but we won't be here. If you're on YouTube, which we're streaming on YouTube or streaming on LinkedIn, let us know if the brand new awesome feature is working. We're streaming in horizontal and vertical
Ooh.
video at the same time. Wow. Look at us.
Crazy.
So let us know if that's working or not working. You'll have to pardon my dust behind me with the office studio transformation construction project that's going on. It's the first time ever I've actually tried to move anything around in the last like 5 years. Big project over Thanksgiving. But anyways, Daniel, you're here. I'm here. It's the hotline. We do this every week. How the heck are you?
I'm doing great. It's been an interesting week so far. I mean, we CMMC FAQs, which I think you're going to talk about, encrypted CUI, non-encrypted CUI. My favorite thing that you actually posted is the actual there's a solicitation coming out with C3PO requirements. This is kind of the first drip of things that we're starting to see here, right? Like this week, I've had quite a few calls with the AEC industry, architectural engineering construction. And it's interesting to even hear them like they're just now starting exploration in some of these organizations, right? Where again, it's like, oh, like we know it's like a thing, but we don't think we're really being impacted. Da, 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 da. And then you show them something like this, and we're like, show your BD team if there's interested in this, any kind of interest in going after this kind of work. And so I'm pulling up my screen. This is the solicitation that came out that you found on the old sam.gov. At the very bottom under the description, you can't necessarily see it. Let me do this. I'll shrink it up here a little bit.
Yeah, it's so funny because my morning routine for the last couple of years was always checking the OMB dashboard for rulemaking updates, and now it's checking sam.gov every day to see which RFPs and solicitations are going to have CMMC in it.
And this one right here, the following is being added to Section 4. CMMC C3PO is anticipated for this requirement. If you disagree, this is kind of funny, with the anticipated CMMC level, please provide a rationale and then the recommended CMMC level. And so it's kind of interesting to, again, start seeing this because even in the CMMC FAQs that came out a couple of days ago, they even had language in there about, hey, the intent of phase 1 is, self-attest, but we can still use discretion. But hey, our intent is self-attest for year 1. And we're already seeing solicitations coming out saying certify. Right?
Yeah, and this is a good example. So our friend Alexis commented when I put this up, and she was like, "Well, this isn't a solicitation. This is a sources sought. They're looking for information. So this isn't saying that it will be in the solicitation, but it's very helpful to see because clearly the customer wants it to be in the solicitation. Now, is there a chance that it won't be in there? Sure, but this is also a program directly related to what is arguably every time going to be controlled technical information. You're working on GPS satellites, the GPS system, the GPS range, all of this stuff. I don't know if anybody here has ever been to China Lake, California, but it's super spooky. It's like a weapons station out in the middle of nowhere. It takes forever to get out there, and there's definitely some cool stuff that they do out there. So not surprised that this customer is interested in having a level 2 C3PAO. If it is in the solicitation, it brings up this same situation we've talked about where people are going to wait until they see it in the solicitation to get started on implementing the requirements in NIST SP 800-171. They're planning to award this, I think, in Q4. So they're planning to award it before the end of phase 1. So if you're going to wait a couple more months to see the solicitation and they include it, you already know it's going to involve DFAR 7012 requirements. So you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by saying, well, maybe it won't be in the solicitation, so we won't start working on 800-171. I think this is a very clear example of a customer letting people know that they want this requirement in the contract.
And so one other small thing, and our producer Justin just put the link here in chat. I mentioned architectural engineering construction. We're about to have the 5 days of industry week coming up the second week of December here. So if you're in manufacturing, architectural engineering construction, private equity, solutions implementers, transportation. If you're in any of these verticals, make sure to register for your specific day. And we're doing a 1 hour webinar specifically about your industry. And so just a little shout out there. Link is in the YouTube chat there. We'll put it in the LinkedIn as well. So
Nice. Alrighty, well, here we go. I was actually kind of surprised at the reaction that this got. So, the DoD officially published updated CMMC FAQs. You can find it if you just Google DoD CMMC CIO. It'll take you right to the CMMC page with the FAQ box right there, and it'll bring up the newest version of the FAQs. There were only a couple where they actually had like any kind of major updates from, well, maybe updates in terms of clarifying what they meant is how DoD would probably describe it. And Daniel, I think the one that probably got most people's attention was, according to the DoD, encrypted CUI is still CUI. How do you feel about this?
I don't like it. I'm gonna be honest. Like, you know, with ITAR, there's just been this assumption of carve outs, right? It's like, hey, if the encryption is applied and you hold the keys, then you can store it in a friendly country, right? In an encrypted state. And the fact that CUI doesn't play by those rules, and a lot of times ITAR on behalf of a federal contract will also be CUI, right? So it ends up bringing ITAR, at least in part, potentially into scope during this conversation. It just kind of conflicts the two. Now, I get some of the logic, especially with somebody posted the other day on LinkedIn, like quantum computing and the ease of, you know, being able to decrypt things in the next few years. But at the same time, it's part of it's just kind of like, man, it brings so many other assets into scope. Like I, you know, posted this on LinkedIn the other day, and it's like cloud providers, right? Non-FedRAMP cloud providers. People thought they were safe because they had encrypted CUI. Sorry, doesn't count anymore. Network traffic, right? That was encrypted locally, now in scope for those assets, for security protection assets. Again, the carve out methodology is really not applicable anymore with CUI, meaning your environment will become more in scope, not less in scope because of this. Now, the only caveat there, and you brought this up, Jacob, is the internet traffic, right? There's an assumed risk with like genuine internet traffic basically being able to be out of scope. But yeah, I mean, I think this is interesting because I think a lot of people that have already been certified, if they were to go back and this ruling, I guess, or this not even ruling, this FAQ was in place, they might have not passed their assessment. Their asset list might not have been up to date. And I bet MSPs are going to have the hardest time with it. Joy commented on the LinkedIn post and said, backup providers, right? The backup job's encrypted. It's stored in a non-FedRAMP cloud. Historically, that was okay. MSPs are going to have to reevaluate their tool stacks yet again. And so, anyways, just kind of interesting overall. I don't like it. I wish they would agree with ITAR requirements because so much of CTI falls into ITAR. But hey, it's the DoD, right? It is what it is.
Yeah, and I think they had another one on there where they said, can a non-FedRAMP moderate cloud service store encrypted CUI data? And their answer is no. So if you are out there and you hear about solution providers or anything like that, and they're saying, hey, we can help you with your DFAR 7012 compliance and by extension CMMC because we have this, you know, cloud-based offering, and they themselves are not FedRAMP or FedRAMP equivalent, just because the data is encrypted doesn't get them out of jail for free. So I think that there were some people getting wrapped up in that issue based off of solution provider marketing and things like that. So do your due diligence, double check the FAQs, and if you already got your cert, then you're good. But if you're coming up on your cert, just double check the math. That way you don't get, you know, a false start or anything like that.
100%.
All righty, let's see here. Okay, so this was an interesting question. Somebody was saying, if I access GCC High Azure Web Portal, is the endpoint that I'm using in scope? I'm using a browser to access this web portal. So is that endpoint that the browser is running on in scope itself?
So yes and no. So if you're processing, store, or transmitting CUI within that session to M365, then yes, because of caching and things like that, that local endpoint will become in scope. Best case scenario, if you're attaching to a CUI asset, right, like Office 365, even if you're not doing CUI things, your endpoint would still at least be qualified as a CRMA because you're around CUI, right? You're not directly accessing it. And due to policies, procedures, or technical controls, you are not supposed to be able to access it. But your asset itself, because it's connecting to that CUI asset, would likely be a CRMA. And so it's very hard to defend CRMA, quite honestly, because if an assessor says, you didn't do a good enough job of defending it, they can immediately look at the 110 and say, show us where you've applied all the controls to that. And that's just not a good way to be in an assessment. So long story short, yes, it would be in scope for some sort of asset classification, depending on the structure of how you have it set up, right? Either CRMA or CUI asset would be most likely.
Gotcha. All right, this is coming up quite a bit. This was on the AB Town Hall. Probably half a dozen people asked this question. They're like, is there a published list of CMMC Level 2 companies? Is there a FedRAMP marketplace equivalent of CMMC Level 2 companies? There is not. The government can see all of the companies that have their CMMC Level 2 status in CMMC EMAS, but that is not a publicly accessible database. There is no publicly accessible list. Outside of a company telling you that they have CMMC and then showing you their audit certificate, there is no one single place to find out. The government at this point has no plans to publish such a list or to make that information available. So if you are looking for it, you're not going to find it.
Nope. Honestly, set up Google News alerts and look at LinkedIn. I think if you want some idea of who's certified, people are doing a pretty good job of putting it out there, quite honestly.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously that's causing issues because then people are like, well, how do I check to make sure that my suppliers are good to go? The DoD's position is basically that's a you problem. That's not an us problem. So not very helpful, but that has been their consistent position for this whole time. So let's see here on that idea of encrypted CUI still being CUI. Rob says, I don't like it. If you have black transport, that would that logic make the transport classified at the level of the items inside of it? How do we make the internet work? Well, the DoD has said that when it comes to transport mechanisms, the internet, things like that, they just don't worry about it. Like they're just accepting the risk, even though it's still CUI. It feels very wishy-washy to me. So it's still something I'm probably going to think about over vacation. I can see the case for both sides, but I'm not sure that they are communicating it in a way that it makes it feel defensible. So I still have to give it some more thought, but they are saying that they're just writing off the risk of this information transiting the internet, which is probably good because the Chinese are hacking BGP all the time. So
now there was the analogy around encrypted CUI that was given to me was you have a bank vault, right? Let's say the CUI is in the bank vault. Just because it's in a bank vault, do you not lock the front door of the bank? That was the analogy, I think, and the premise of which that was based on. And so that's, again, I'm not a huge fan of that logic as it relates to this, but I'm interested in the post-Thanksgiving Jacob's opinion of this.
It reminds me of like the FIPS discussion, right? Where it's like the idea that you need to have validated modules is a defensible idea, but they don't do a lot to explain their reasoning behind it. And so as a result, people really don't like it. So I'll have to give it some more thought, but vacation first. So anyways, Nicholas says, has there been any new discussion on additional departments wanting to implement CMMC requirements following the DoD? I remember previous discussions around DOE and others essentially waiting for the road to be paved. Nothing official, but we've heard lots of rumors, specifically around NASA and GSA being interested. But any department could leverage the requirements to have CMMC if they really wanted to. But I would imagine that NASA and GSA would be close behind because they're also on the FAR Council with the Department of Defense. But there hasn't been anything official. I'm not sure we're going to hear anything official before the end of the year. So
what's your take on FAR CUI? Because I see a couple other comments in here. One from Jason Sharp, FAR CUI rule still in rulemaking. Is that because FAR CUI would take basically the CMMC requirements, at least in the proposed rule. That's what the baseline was, and then apply it to all federal contractors dealing with CUI.
So you can think of the FAR CUI rule as DFAR 7012 for everybody else, in the sense that it puts contract clause language that says, if you deal with this data, you have to implement NIST SP 800-171. If you experience an incident, you have to report it. If you have an incident, you have to make things available. And if you're going to flow the data downstream, you have to send this clause with that data. It doesn't disrupt anything that the defense contractors have, because they already have 7012. Now that creates the environment for something like CMMC to be applicable, but the FAR CUI rule, like DFAR 7012, does not contain a third-party assessment or verification mechanism of any kind, which drives me up the freaking wall. Yeah. I met the guy at GSA who is shepherding the FAR CUI rule through the process last year, and he was very skittish, did not want to talk about it at all, didn't want to talk. It's like I tell people all the time, the amount of information that the DoD communicated through the rulemaking process is an unprecedented amount of communication. Normally, when you corner people in charge of rulemaking before a final rule comes out, they get really scared, because they're like, I'm not allowed to tell you anything. I'm not allowed to hint at what's in the rule. You got to wait for the rule to come out. So I shoved this guy in a locker and I was like, why aren't you including a third-party verification mechanism? And he was just like, that's just not what we're willing to do. And like, that self-attestation doesn't work, and that as a result, you'll need the third-party verification mechanism. So why wait for you to experience the same failure as 7012? Just put it in the rule now. And then he was like, I don't have any lunch money for you. Leave me alone. So that would be the precursor for them requiring CMMC by having the requirements like 7012 in a contract. We know that some agencies are interested in having CMMC on top of it, but the FAR CUI rule will not itself require third-party verification. It's left up to the discretion of the agencies. Now, originally, we got the FAR CUI rule in January of this year. Not a lot of public comments, not a lot going on. We heard that it went back into interagency review in the summer, and we were planning to see it in December, end of this year. However, the administration announced that they were going through the revolutionary FAR overhaul in May of this year. So to their credit, they are actually going through every single part of the FAR, and they are removing anything that's duplicative. They're removing almost everything that doesn't have a legislative basis. They're reorganizing, rephrasing, all that stuff. It could be good, it could be bad, depending on who you are. It's really good for the lawyers. So you may not think that it's necessarily a good thing if you're not one of them. But as a result, we don't really know when the FAR CUI rule will emerge, because the entirety of the rewrite of the entire FAR has to go through rulemaking itself. So will they allow a new addition to the FAR to happen before the overall rewrite? Will they wait until it's done? Will they happen at the same time? We don't really know. We're not going to see the overall FAR rewrite go through rulemaking before the end of this year. So I don't think that we'll see the FAR CUI rule before the end of this year. I could be wrong. Nobody knows. The people that do know, they don't answer even when you give them a swirly. So we're not too sure. Let's see here. Yeah. FAR CUI rule paves the road for agencies to adopt CMC via supplemental agency FAR clause. Yeah, absolutely. Now we've heard of onesie twosie situations of people who are federal contractors, not DoD, who are pursuing CMMC because they're just like, I can just do it now before everybody else has the rush, and I'm just easier to do business with. That's a very early adopter among the early adopters, but there is some appetite out there for it. But yeah, we'll just have to see. I think we'll probably hear a lot more about it next year, especially now that the rollout's underway. But with the shutdown and the post-shutdown hangover and then the holidays, I don't think we're going to hear anything about that before the start of the new year.
Yeah, we heard the Department of Transportation was requiring NIST Standard 171 Rev 3, and they took reciprocity for CMMC because the client already was CMMC certified. And so
yeah,
interesting just to see that kind of in play somewhere outside of the DoD.
Yeah, I actually need to follow up before I set my out of office LinkedIn message. I had some folks reach out to me from the trucking industry
Hmm.
Basically, their message basically was, we're extremely far behind as an industry, and everyone's waking up to this being a requirement. Can you do a webinar? So if you're listening, I'll get back to you as soon as the stream is over. But it reminds me kind of how we saw that recent push by the construction, architecture, engineering industry to kind of like get caught up with everything. Manufacturing was super early, higher ed was super early, and now you're seeing other industry sectors get caught up as well. So there you go. Let's see here. Does DoD have discretion to require CMMC Level 3 in phase 1 of the rollout? Well, I mean, technically, I guess DoD could do whatever they want to. By the book, no, they aren't going to require CMMC Level 1 or CMMC Level 3 in phase 1, so up until November of 2026. That probably won't happen, even if they wanted it to happen, because DIBCAC is the set of assessors that run CMMC Level 3 assessments, and they just recently finished their initial pilots of CMMC Level 3 assessments. So everything that I have heard is that they won't be ready to start CMMC Level 3 assessments until middle to end of next year. So I highly, highly doubt that anybody's going to see a CMMC Level 3 requirement from the government in a solicitation between now and next November. However, breaking news scoop for everybody, I have heard conversations between the government and the primes that there will be contract mods that say CMMC Level 3 will be required, and that it'll be in like 12 to 18 months. So the primes are going to know before the end of phase 1 that they will need CMMC Level 3. So you could easily see CMMC Level 3 requirements or pushes from the primes, but not in an official government solicitation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make that's interesting. Like, hey, heads up, we're gonna kind of have this language tucked away, and when level 3 is more rolled out in the sense of getting certifications and phase 2 of the rollout of CMMC, just get ready for it.
Yeah, I've heard that the primes are already getting told, you're going to need level 3 on this program and that program, and we're going to sometimes even modify the existing contract next year, and then you'll have 12 or 18 months. So you're not inside phase 1, but they will know during phase 1 that CMMC Level 3 will eventually be a thing, which means they're probably going to turn around and tell you CMMC Level 3 is a thing now, even though it won't be a thing for them for a year and a half, right? So it's mostly a prime discretion rather than a DoD discretion thing. Let's see. We had a requirement by a state agency project sponsored by DHS and Department of Transportation that required NIST SB 800-171. Oh, this is what you're talking about earlier. They accepted 800-171 Rev 2. That's good. I'm glad that they did that. Yeah, we still have this issue of Rev 2 versus Rev 3. The DoD got around that issue by putting out a blanket waiver, essentially a blanket, what they call class deviation, that said, even though DFAR 7012 tells you to do the most current version, and the most current version is Rev 3, keep doing Rev 2 until we tell you otherwise. And that essentially means keep doing Rev 2 until we update the CMMC program to be able to assess Rev 3. So DoD is going to be on Rev 2 for another year and a half at least, before they start to update the program to go to Rev 3. Let's see. Yeah, somebody's saying, "Oh man, level 3 timeline snuck up." Yeah, I think you're going to see that come through more and more. If you are a supplier under MDA programs, National Reconnaissance Office programs, hypersonics, stealth, anything like that, then I would be surprised if you don't hear whispers and rumors about level 3 sooner rather than later. It's not everybody, but there is a set of programs that the DoD is very concerned about, and they have no problem pressing the button on those programs. So that isn't going to be everybody, but it's definitely going to be somebody.
So we have a handful of clients actively pursuing this, one of which I know was already informed by the prime that you have to be CMMC Level 3 by, I think it was January 2027 is the deadline they gave their supplier, their
It's nice that they gave them a long heads up.
Yeah.
But yeah, level 3 is no joke.
Here's the thing, we were working through it, and the corporate IT infrastructure uplift, although is not insignificant, is not near the level of effort as the OT uplift for CMMC level 3. Because especially in the manufacturing space or the research space, there's so much OT or specialized assets out there. You can't have CRMAs under level 3, and you have to apply all level 2 and level 3 controls to specialized assets. And so when I tell people all the time, it's like, listen, your corporate IT environment, I don't know, maybe a 4 to 6 months uplift from level 2 to level 3, maybe not even that much. Your OT could take years.
Yeah.
The only kind of saving grace is they do allow intermediary devices, kind of front-loaded devices to your OT to implement all those controls on. But it takes a lot of time, and downtime for manufacturing is not exactly easy to schedule, right?
Now,
And so,
one small ray of hope here is that level 3 requirements are new requirements. That is not true at level 2 and level 1, but at level 3, they are new requirements. There has been no historical contract clause that has said do CMMC level 3 requirements. That's not in 7012. It's not in 7008. It's not in 19, not in 20, not in any of those. So it's a big uplift, but the government is expecting your costs to go up significantly when you receive a level 3 requirement, sometimes in the millions of dollars, potentially based off the size of your organization. So you have some cover here in order to have your costs go up to meet the requirements that somebody just at level 2 or at level 1 does not have. So that can be a very advantageous situation depending on how creative you get with your upgrade accounting, I'll say.
So small business was 2.7 million one time with $500,000 annually for level 3, and large businesses was 21.1 million with 4.1 million annually. So I mean, not insignificant.
Yeah. Justin said last week we were told by one of our primes that we need to be a 110 by the beginning of the year to continue getting contracts. Yeah, I'm hearing this a lot where people are saying there was a Reddit thread where somebody was saying that they had been pestering their company owner forever to get started on this. And they said, I don't think this is going to be a thing. And now the prime is, according to the thread, hounding them all the time, basically being like, you do this or you don't work with us. And now it's like an emergency where they're getting asked every day if they're ready to go. And this is the kind of thing you don't see it in the headlines. You're not going to see it on Inside Cybersecurity. You're not going to see it on Breaking Defense. You're not going to have DoD put out any information about it. It's just these individual situations where this customer, that prime, this program manager, this contracting officer says, you got time, you don't have time. It's very, very hard to predict, but I'm hearing this more and more that people are getting told, you got to do this by this date. Otherwise it's a wrap. So let's see. Julian said, can you clear up CTI markings? Some training material instruct to have the SP category in the banner, while others state to not have any categories in the banner as they are stated in the designation indicator. Which is it? I mean, I'm due to go back through my CUI training, but I would say I don't remember what the DoD CUI marking training says. I believe that the header and footer banner can sometimes just be reduced down to controlled. And as long as the CTI designation in a distribution statement contains all the relevant information, it's good to go. So I would look at DoD instruction 523024 and compare that with the CUI training. But I don't remember if the designation box on CTI can override the header and footer, or if the header and footer has to be anything more than just CUI or controlled. So
yeah,
somebody who's taken the training more recently, let us know in chat.
I'll keep looking it up, but the DoD CUI registry site, CUI program, did post some marking tips for each of the things here. What's interesting as well is they put marking discrepancies that they've found of things not done appropriately. Anyways, that's a little side conversation, a little side mission for us later on, Jacob.
Oh man, talk about side quests. You found something on there. It was the who got caught list, right,
Oh
Daniel?
yeah, who got caught right here.
Man, yeah. This is something that I think people would find very interesting. Hopefully they continue to put out this information, because I'm sure a lot of people here know, it's like sometimes it can be very hard to convince leadership to commit to this if there aren't any clear circumstance or clear consequences that they can point to. So hopefully they start looking that up more. Yeah, Jason said it's 5248. The specific DoD instruction for distribution statement marking, which would apply to CTI, is I believe it's 523024.
The other fun thing on this page, I haven't posted on LinkedIn yet, but it's visits to the CUI registry, DoD CUI registry page by state. It's like, who's the most interested in CUI out there? Virginia taking the lead, California, New York, Illinois, Texas.
I like how there's a box for
Washington.
LA. It's definitely just me, right?
Hey, Alabama made top 10. I'm proud to say that. So
There you go. There you go.
yeah,
Roll Tide.
roll
Yeah.
tide. That's right.
So Justin was saying he's been told by his primes they have to be 110 by the beginning of next year to get their contracts. And Mark said same from 2 of our primes.
Wow.
So yeah, if you guys are hearing anecdotes like that, definitely let us know in the chat. Are you guys also hearing either directly or through clients or through people that you know are primes issuing these deadlines? I check the Lockheed blogs and the supplier blogs all the time. Those don't seem to be getting updated as often as people seem to be getting told directly, hey, you need to be ready to go or not. The latest Lockheed blog is like, there's a phased rollout and you got all this time and this is what the rule says. And then you talk to regular people and they go, that's not what we were told. We were told do it by January or the lights are getting shut off.
I am curious if you can share just the name of the prime that you're hearing that from, since some of the usernames here are more anonymous. If you're interested in sharing that, I'd be curious to see that too.
Yeah. And if not, you can always DM us too and be like, hey, I don't want to have my name associated with it, but we're always interested in collecting those anecdotes. All righty. Can an organization with a self-assessment be required to support their score with evidence if requested? Yes, absolutely. So this is something that I posted about recently. It's what we're doing the podcast coming out next week about. DFARS 252-204-7020 has been in effect since the year 2020. With the CMMC 1.0 rule that came out in 2020 had 2 parts to it. The first part was CMMC. That's the part that got put on hold and went through additional rulemaking and is just now starting to roll out. The other part was DFARS 7019 and DFARS 7020, the DoD assessment methodology, the 5, 3, and 1 point scoring system. So the reason you have to upload a score to SPRS, the reason that DIBCAC can show up on your door and say, we want to audit your compliance with DFARS 7012 is because of the other part of the CMMC 1.0 rule that never got put on pause. Recently, we have heard of at least half a dozen companies who convinced themselves incorrectly, apparently, that they only needed CMMC level 1. They got official notices from DIBCAC that they will be getting an in-person audit at what's known as a DIBCAC high assessment against DFARS 7012 requirements within 90 calendar days. That includes holidays. So they got told right around Halloween that they're going to have an in-person audit against 7012 in like mid-January. And this is a super not fun process. In the podcast that we have coming out next week, we talk about the DIBCAC intake form. If you just Google DIBCAC and go to their website, they've got the form on there. And they say within 2 weeks of us notifying you of an audit, you need to acknowledge that you have received the notice. You need to make your system security plan available. You need to provide your networking diagram, all your data flow. These are all the people that we want to talk to. We're going to be there Monday through Friday from 8 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon. I mean, it's like a whole process. The other thing is that a CMMC assessment primarily is only looking at whether you've implemented 800-171. DIBCAC works for the Defense Contract Management Agency. This is an audit of all of the paragraphs of DFARS 7012. So one of the things that they ask is, how are you flowing this information down? Are you flowing the clause down with it? How are you dealing with your incident response requirements? How are you dealing with, all these other things that DFARS 7012 requires? So you can be asked for a CMMC level 2 self-assessment and 100% still undergo a DIBCAC high audit under DFARS 7020. So yeah, absolutely. That's why I always laugh whenever people breathe a sigh of relief that says, oh, we get a self-assessment. You're like, why would that be any less rigorous?
It's interesting. People put Northrop in the chat. Side note, Operation Cancel Holidays. I just went to their supplier site, and guess who has a CMMC post about
Hey, is it new?
When Northrop? So I'm going to share my screen real quick because a lot of people in chat were saying Northrop's the one throwing this down. They have one little baby announcement, October 17th of 2025, under their cybersecurity suppliers form here. And literally, this is the whole thing. Neither contracting officers nor prime can waive or deviate from the CMMC assessment requirements. Contracting officers may not award contracts to non-compliant contractors, and primes may not award purchase orders to non-compliant subcontractors. We encourage you to proactively prepare to comply with this future contractual requirement. And then my favorite part, it's only informational. It's not legal advice or direction from Northrop.
Man, if this isn't the ultimate, it's just business type of a letter, then I mean, I don't know what to tell you, because it's like they're just like, this is the situation. This is what you got to do. Obviously, people are being told do it by the beginning of the year or else. They're like, here's some hyperlinks to some resources.
God's good luck, basically.
See you next year, right? If you have not, you've said this a million times, Daniel, if you have not heard from them before now about how they're going to help you, they're probably not interested in helping you. And then this is all you get. So, man, yeah, I missed that one. So
I did too. When they were putting it, I'm like, surely if they're saying this much, maybe they posted something about it. But to your point, it's very much a, hey, we're just FYI, anyways.
Yeah, Justin was saying they didn't even see it on the supplier page for the prime that they were working. They just heard it from the purchaser. So that's, this is what we were saying. It's like, it's just very situational depending on where you are in the ecosystem, which program you're under, which prime you're under, which purchaser you're under, specifically can really affect things in terms of how it rolls out. All righty, let's see here. Will the Cyber AB publish a list of bad eggs?
Oh.
Companies advertising themselves as turnkey solutions when they are actually non-compliant solutions. The AB will not. The AB will not publish that kind of a list. The DoD will not publish that kind of a list. Sadly, we will probably not publish that kind of a list. If you're interested in things like this, I've been told there may or may not be a channel on the CUI Discord server specifically called Bad Eggs, where people post exactly this type of situation. So if you go to the CMMC subreddit on the sidebar, there's a link to the CUI Center of Excellence Discord server. That's been the hive mind of a lot of big time CMMC nerds for years and years and years. They have a dedicated channel where they talk about bad eggs, but there will never be an official list published by the AB or by the DoD. Sometimes people will publish not even a list of bad eggs. Publishing a list of good eggs will cause like threats of legal action, because they're like, you didn't include us on the list of good things, so we're going to try and sue you. So you just don't see these lists very often, which is a real shame, because there's a lot of people out there who are full of crap. Any thoughts, Daniel?
No, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts, because here's the hard thing, right? Like, we have these conversations, like you and I, because we hear the horror stories, right, of people that were like, hey, I'd signed up for them, and then all of a sudden they're not going to support me through the assessment, right? Contractually, I didn't have that they would support me through the assessment. Okay. Oh, man, gosh. All right. I'm going to go there. Okay. So there is an ERP vendor this week, and I'll say this: they're manufacturing adjacent, so they're in that space, and they have been telling people that they are CMMC compliant for years. And we have heard from two separate clients this week who are using that, or prospects technically, who are using that software, and only now are they actively pursuing FedRAMP moderate equivalency. After these prospects were ready to go through their CMMC certification with the tool that was promised to them that was CMMC compliant. And anyways, that's just an ERP system. That's not even like a partner. Like
Right.
when you think partners, in the CMMC space, you're thinking MSPs, MSSPs, or cloud providers, right? So we know cloud providers that, quite honestly, were trying to skirt around the FedRAMP moderate requirement at all, equivalency or authorized. Turns out, they didn't do a good job of that. The boundary wasn't as tight. Or we know companies that are promising that they're CMMC certified because their apps on AWS Gov, or their CUI portals hosted there, but the actual app isn't FedRAMP authorized or equivalent. We know MSPs out there who are promising CMMC, but their tools they're using to support their clients don't meet FedRAMP that have CUI in them, right?
Right.
And especially with the encrypted thing now coming up, a lot of those products are going to have to be reevaluated anyway. So it's just there's so many things like that, where if it's a cloud provider not in the FedRAMP marketplace and they can't produce what their equivalency was and the 3PAO that they used, stay away. If they don't have past performance of getting people certified, stay away. Like, those are the two easiest filter sets to use when you're looking for either a solution provider or some sort of outsourced managed provider.
Yeah.
And are they CMMC certified if they're a service provider?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind is all these stories that we've heard from C3PAOs where they sit down and the MSP that, told this company they were going to help them out either isn't at the table, or they sit down at the table and they can't answer questions. And you're like, that should go on the list immediately. But let me ask you this. If you were to create such a list, would you, how many names would be on the list? Not what the names are. Would you have a dozen, 2 dozen, 100?
Honestly, at this point, I would probably have somewhere around that I know actively in the community that I feel are misrepresenting their ability to make a client compliant within a certain time frame. Like
this is not
days
like,
or less.
this isn't situational yellow light. This is like red light, no go.
I would probably say it's somewhere sitting around 20 to 30 that are consistently coming up.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things where we don't want to badmouth anyone. Number one, obviously potential legal repercussions, but it's just not good practice, right? We will happily inform people of the filters and questions to ask to validate if somebody is a good partner or provider, and we'll lean on the expertise that we have. But yeah, I mean, there's probably 20 or 30 that we hear from coming to us from them saying, hey, I signed up for them. Yeah, I signed up for them and they're not able to meet XYZ requirement. Or they said they would, but they can't.
Yeah, you don't want to badmouth anybody, but when the most common source of potential client calls is coming from people who are leaving their existing partner or solution provider, then you kind of start to notice the same names coming up over and over again. You'll have to wait for Daniel and I's memoir one day.
Yes.
When we do our tell-all, but for now, there is no list.
we'll have a Patreon for backstage with Jacob.
There you go. Yeah. So premium members get access to that egg list. It's a joke, Scott. It's a joke.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
He's probably, his veins popping out of his forehead at the airport terminal right now. Can an organization that does not require level 2 C3PAO status require their subs to achieve level 2 C3PAO status? Yeah, sure. I mean, you can require your subs to do whatever you want. Essentially, it's in the terms of the contract that's negotiated between the two of you. So if for some reason you want them to have C3PAO status, even though you yourself don't need it, you can put that in the contract. Now, are they going to negotiate that out? Are they actually going to do it? That's between you guys. But if you don't require it, you don't have to require it of them. If you aren't flowing the data to them, then 7012 doesn't have to flow to them. But, if you want some level of assurance that they're doing cybersecurity, there's worse solutions to pick than a CMMC third-party audit. So there's nothing that prevents you from doing that.
Nope. Private contracts, they can do whatever the heck they want.
The miracle of private contracts. All righty. Let's see. In your experience, who is usually in charge of making data identity decisions regarding FCI and CUI? This is an interesting conversation I've heard you have a couple times over the last couple of weeks, where you talked about the rise of like a CMMC program manager inside of organizations. What do you think here, Daniel?
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm starting to see, especially for larger organizations, that CMMC program project manager somehow adjacent to trade compliance. Here's the interesting thing. Most trade compliance teams don't want to touch CUI at all.
Isn't
And
that
so
funny?
it's crazy. So like the people that you would think would be the most able and competent at approaching this topic don't want to touch it. And so they were like, leave me with ITAR and EAR. Don't tell me about CUI. Right. And so there's this kind of new emerging group of people that are being hired for CUI program managers. Sometimes they're in legal, sometimes they're in contracts, and working with the primes or the DoD directly as a filter set to understand two things. One, and what I'm receiving, is it actually CUI or inappropriately marked? And number two, now that I have it that's CUI or I'm generating that CUI, what elements of it are not CUI that I can then disseminate to my supply chain, right? Because that's the two big things. Number one is what I have actually CUI. That way I can keep my boundary small because I just want to keep just the CUI pieces protected. And number two, how exposed is my supply chain from getting this information I have to share with them to do their job? And if I send them the whole document, like this morning, I literally got off a phone call with a really cool company, and they're like, we get 50-page design docs, and we only need 3 pages that are not CUI to do our job, but they send us the whole thing. Right. And so the emergence of the CUI program manager, again, contracts, legal, I'm actually not seeing a ton out of trade compliance groups from that's where they're being housed, working with supply chain managers and then working with other departments to understand the data flow and then to mark or de-scope CUI downstream.
Yeah. All righty. Let's see here. How do we manage non-US persons in M365? I mean, we were just talking with a company not too long ago, and they were like, we have people who work in a foreign country because of the nature of what we do, especially commercial space, dual use space. I mean, you're doing launches in foreign countries. You've got people working in foreign countries, but you're also working on ostensibly everything that would be export controlled CTI. And that's just the nature of the business. So what do we do here, Daniel?
Yeah, so I pulled up this exact slide that my good friend Patrick Abel made on our product management team. And this is called attribute-based access control, ABAC. And so when we're looking at the data flow of protecting the data in GCC high from non-US persons, we have to know two things. Number one, what data is it? And number two, it has to be marked appropriately. Number two, the status of the identity or the person, right? Are they a non-US person? Are they a US person? Are they a non-US person with a TAA? They a US citizen? Some export control requires that additional level of requirements of citizenship. And so when we're looking at the workflow, HR has to kind of start that process. We then need to provision custom attributes in AD or Intra ID or Okta, whatever IDP you're using. Carry those over into Office 365 for dynamic group memberships, and then using things like Purview and site containers and potentially information barriers is a little bit more of a nuclear option to protect and segment that data away from people that are non-US persons. But if you can't initially figure out their personship, citizenship, that you got to figure out that problem. And then you also have to make sure that the data is being marked appropriately. If not, you're looking at a 2-tenant situation where you keep all your non-US persons in a commercial tenant, you keep all your US persons in a gov tenant, and then you just have some limited collaboration between the two, including different email domains. And so a lot of organizations internationally don't want to do that, or organizations with non-US persons. They want to have everybody under the same roof to be represented as one company, right? And so because non-US persons can access CUI that's not export control without a license, right? And so that's kind of the interesting piece here. CUI doesn't have a US persons requirement. Certain export control does have US persons requirements, right? So
Right.
it's striking that balance of what type of data do you have? Is it marked correctly? And then leveraging HR and IT to provision the governance structure to protect that data.
Nice. All righty. Somebody was asking, what are the level 1 and level 2 certification goals for 2026? So this is actually really interesting. So for level 1, I can't remember what the numbers are for level 1. It's self-attestation. So I honestly haven't been paying very much attention to it. For level 2 C3PAO certification, it becomes much more interesting. So the latest update that we got on the AB town hall earlier this week was there are now 575 companies with a
Wow.
CMMC Level 2 C3PAO status. That includes all of the companies that had joint surveillance assessment prior to the
Okay.
CMMC program going into effect. But I think since January, there's 517 companies that have employed a C3PAO and gotten a Level 2 status. The interesting part is that is more than DoD estimated they would hit in the entire first phase of CMMC. DoD's estimate was they would have 517 Level 2 certifications in phase 1. So we're already way past their initial estimate for phase 1. And I posted a poll about this the other day. Their estimate for year 2, phase 2, essentially for year 2 of the rollout was they were going to have 2,599 Level 2 certified companies. So at the current rate of growth, we're definitely going to hit 1,000 Level 2 certifications in Q1 of next year.
Wow.
Do you guys think we're going to hit more or less than 2,600 Level 2 companies by the end of next year? Because we're already past what they thought we were going to hit for phase 1. Will we hit what they thought they were going to get in phase 2 by the end of phase 1? Are they going to be a year ahead of time? I mean, at the current rate of growth, it could happen, but people were somewhat skeptical in the comments on LinkedIn. But I mean, based off the current trends, it's not unrealistic.
Here's when do you think is going to be the critical mass point of people like, oh, I'm really, really, really going to have to do this? Like 5,000 certified companies? Like, is it?
I don't know if the total number is going to be the trigger as much as like people in chat were saying. My customer said if I don't do it by the beginning of the year, no more contracts. If it turns out that the primes really are no more contracts, it won't matter if there's 5 companies that have the cert or 50,000, because people are going to go, oh my God, they weren't kidding around. And so I think that's going to be, I think Q1 is going to be where we really start to see what's happening. One, because it's going to be after the holidays. You're going to start to see more solicitations, but you're also going to see these primes turn the screws after they finally said, hey, you better quit. Otherwise we're going to have a problem on our hands. So I feel like Q1 is going to be where we really start to see it accelerate. The good news is that the assessment capacity in the ecosystem is growing just as fast. So there's a ton of CCAs and lead CCAs, and it's growing quite a bit. So that's healthy to see. I was having a conversation with somebody on LinkedIn this morning, and they were like, well, we still don't have enough assessment capacity because we need to do 40,000 assessments a year. And I was like, what? Like
40,000
a year? What are you talking about? And they said, well, if we have 120,000 companies that need Level 2 and we only have 3 years to get it done, we got to do 40,000 a year. And I was like, okay, I see the problem here. The phased rollout for when the requirements will start to show up in new solicitations is not the deadline for everyone to have their Level 2, right? DoD estimates that it will take up to 7 years for all current contracts to finish and for all contractors to be on new contracts. So it isn't like by year 3 of the phased rollout, everybody who needs a Level 2 certification has to have a Level 2 certification. It's going to draw out past that. I think the average rate that the DoD has is like 16,000 or 16,500 per year, which is still a lot, but you're talking about going from like 500 assessors to like, I think it's like 1,500 or something like that, 2,000 assessors. It's not 40,000 assessments a year. It's like 16,000. So still a ton of growth that has to happen, but we don't have to have everybody done by the end of those 3 years. That being said, if you're like, oh, well, it's going to take 7 years for everybody to get wrapped up in this, I have up to 7 years to get ready. Not necessarily the case for you individually. So do your due diligence. Yeah, Matt says, I think the big push will be once subcontractors start to lose work. Yeah, unfortunately. I don't want anybody to lose work. I don't want anybody to have to suffer the consequences. I don't want this to have to be a painful experience, but everybody in this ecosystem knows that it's the threat of the consequence and the actual consequence that motivates the action. So that's where we're at with that. All right, somebody said, what's the replacement for CS2 events? So we're not doing CS2 anymore. We've shifted over to a series of smaller events that we call Summit 7 Live. We did Colorado Springs. We did Tampa. We did Dallas, Fort Worth, and Huntsville this year. So this is more like 30 to 50 people rather than like 250 people for 2 full days. We're talking 30 to 50 people for half a day. So we're getting together in the afternoon, and then we're doing a happy hour. We're getting together in the morning, and we're all back on flights home by the end of the day. And it's a lot more intimate. It's much more of a forum setup than it is like a top-down lecture from the stage type of a situation. So I don't think they published the dates for Summit 7 Live coming up next year, but I think we're doing 8 of them next year after only doing 4 this year. So be on the lookout for that. Both of them were fun, but honestly, it's kind of more fun whenever there's just like a group of people hanging out and talking rather than it like this huge production. So be on the lookout for those.
It's nice. And we honestly get to more sensitive topics, I guess would probably be the best way to say that, right? Because people are not, exposed to a room of 500 people, right? It's like, oh, you can actually genuinely ask and not feel as vulnerable having to ask what you might think is a stupid question, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah. And registration's way cheaper because they're free. So
yep.
You're not having to pay for a CS2 ticket or anything like that. And we had Army Corps of Engineers just show up at one of them.
We also had a false claims lawyer. That was fun too.
False claims lawyer, somebody who worked at GAO, and they weren't telling us anything they weren't allowed to tell us. No. But very interesting conversations that can be had. So so check those out for sure. Let's see. In cases where DoD chooses to insert level 2 C3PAO status requirements in contract extension years, what mechanisms exist to help cover the cost? Daniel, you got a list of mechanisms. So let's say the DoD, I'm on contract right now. I have 7012. And my option year comes up or extension years come up, and DoD says, hey, you got to have level 2 in order to win this option, right? In order for us to keep working with you. What do I do to cover the cost?
You eat the cost. There is no pass through with this situation, right? Again, CMMC, the cost of implementation, Jacob, you say this all the time. The cost of implementing all these controls is back 2017, right? 2016. The cost for the certification, the DoD is just assuming, hey, if you're going to do business with us, it's going to be an extra, I don't know, 40, 50, 60, 70,000, whatever the range is for the going market of a certification. So right now, they're saying you should have already implemented this. And if you're just self-attesting, there is no cost per se, right? There's some labor obviously to do the scoring. But if you actually have to be certified for it, the DoD is saying, hey, you should pay for a certification. And they're not including the cost of the potential hundreds of thousands of dollars to implement all of the controls. So long story short, I mean, if you're a prime and you have an option year and you want to renew, and this is going to be a requirement, be prepared to go ahead to already have met this to be able to be eligible for the extension. There is no pass through here for this just because it happens to be an extension.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, wrapping up here at the end, people are getting told by their primes, you got to do this by the beginning of the year or else, which means I'm sure a lot of people are going to be talking to MSPs, trying to figure out what's going on. Do you have a recommended list of things? What do I ask? How do I vet? How do I sanity check the things I'm being told? I gotta make this decision in a hurry, and I need to make sure it's the right one the first time.
Yep. So a few things out of the gate. Here's some nice to haves. Here's some things you really need to do. Nice to haves. The MSP is CMMC certified. Not a requirement, but it does show they know what they're talking about. If you can't find that, then look for an MSP that has gotten people through certifications, has a list of their own asset list that they're going to use to provide support to you, have a list of their personnel, right? U.S. persons or not for the export control piece, have a list of what tools they're using and if they're FedRAMP or not, and if CUI is going to be on them or not, encrypted or unencrypted now. There's a little bonus there. And make sure that they have a customer or shared responsibility matrix, right? If they can't have that, how do you know what elements they're supporting for you, right? So those are the kind of the highlight reel of make sure you kind of go down that checklist. Again, if you're using an MSP that's certified, then you know they've already done all of that due diligence. The MSP Collective website's a great website to see MSPs that have taken it seriously and are certified. I don't know what the total count is now. Is it around 20, 15, 20,
Yeah, it's
30,
probably 2
something like
dozen
that?
or more at this point. It's a
Yeah.
bunch.
So
Yeah.
definitely take a look at that. But that's it. That's the highlight.
Yeah, I agree. If this MSP has a cert and they've put a bunch of people through the certification process who are their clients, pretty good indicator that they know what's going on. So there you go. There you go. We're at an hour. It always flies by every time. Thanks everybody for hanging out. We're not doing a live stream next week because of the holidays. So hopefully everybody has a good Thanksgiving and has fun on Black Friday and everybody hangs out. For those of you who got DIBCAC audit notices, everybody else, keep them in your thoughts because they are not going to have a nice holiday. They're going to be working overtime. And so we'll see you 2 weeks from now after Thanksgiving, and then we'll go from there. If you find this afterwards and you got questions or comments, you can leave it in the chat. We'll add it to the queue. You can always DM us. Find us at summit7.us. Find us at CUIHotline.org. You can fill out the form over there. You can leave a message up there at the phone number if you would like to do that. It's always fun to play those on the air. Yep. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Happy Thanksgiving.